All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Human Resource Committee meeting Wednesday, February 14th, 2024. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. Call to order. Any declarations of conflict of interest? Hearing none, we'll move on then to the approval of the agenda.
I'm just going to ask if I could add one item under discussion. Just want to get clarification from the CAO here, just clarification on the hiring process for the acting director.
Okay, so we'll move that to introduction of new business, I would
Sure,
assume.
yeah.
So can I get approval of the agenda?
Second.
Thank you very much. And the adoption of the minutes. So the minutes from the Human Resource Committee meeting on January 18th of 2024 is also included. Is there any questions or comments regarding the minutes from the previous meeting?
I thought just budget. No, that's fine.
No questions? Is there any business arising from those minutes? I guess I've already suggested that, so don't think so. Then we'll move on to, we have one report. That is the CAO Annual Evaluation Process Request for Proposals, HR MGMTNU 022024. I'm going to hand that over to our CAO, Eleanor Mohammed, to bring us up to speed on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this report and the draft request for proposal was created, one, because it was recommended earlier, but also in discussions with the chair of the HR committee in terms of having a neutral reviewer coming in every year to be able to run the evaluation process for the review of the CAO once a year. And so what you have before you is a copy of the actual RFP itself, and it's a little different this time around because the committee is so involved in this annual evaluation of the CAO that we thought it was fitting that this committee would be able to review the RFP and essentially give the okay before we go ahead and post it. You'll note in the RFP there aren't any dates attributed to it yet, and that was just in case there was any edits or changes that you needed to make to it today in case we had to bring it back. So I am ready and open for any feedback that you have on this.
Thank you for that, Eleanor. I'll start off, I guess, in reading through the RFP, a couple observations. One you just indicated, which I think is great, to have the committee members as part of the evaluation process. It'll take it away from kind of that internal aspect because of the nature of the work that we're trying to accomplish here. So I think it's a great opportunity, and we'll work together as a team to ensure that when that gets out and posted and comes back in, that we schedule some time to do some reviews and selection evaluation criteria. Secondly, noting that some of the criteria of what we're looking for, as I've spoken publicly before, I think it's a great opportunity and an idea for, or opportunity for us to create a framework that allows us to go forward and help the council as a whole, led by the HR committee, to do the annual evaluation process to our CAO. And again, keeping that kind of external to the inner operations of the HR department. So I like that you have that identified in there as well, and way we would do that. So I'm pleased with moving that forward as is. I don't see anything else. Obviously, there's timelines and dates that are not identified in there, but they'll come after. So any further questions by the committee?
No, it's good points. No, I think it's pretty, for me anyway, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I think it aligns. Sorry, Councillor Ramsey.
Sorry, Terry, didn't interrupt you. It's just, we're reviewing it every year.
Oh, sorry, it was red. Yes, beyond red.
Oh, there we are. Thank you. Was it every year or every 2 years? Terry, can you remember that? I just thought it was.
Well, there was talk about every 6 months, which I think is a little overkill.
Yes.
I think it was once a year.
So it is going once a year, okay. Like, I got no issues with that. I just thought in the past it was every 2 years, that's all. Thank you.
So I believe what was agreed upon contractually through the CAO's contract is to have a annual review post the 6-month review, which we concluded here several months ago now. So we're going to move forward with the annual review, and this will be looking to do, at the very minimum right now, will be a 3-year term with this, with said vendor to depend on helping us through that framework and a couple of different things. So we'll be setting up the framework, and then eventually year 1, 2, and 3 to help us implement and actually go through the process of doing the evaluation. So it won't be solely on us, but there'll be a framework in place that allows us to manage it, be responsible for it, accountable, and to rest of council. So that's the goal here with this annually.
So just one question. So I assume, I guess the date's set and so on. Like who is Emily responsible to work with the consultant? Or does this consultant?
No,
just
it
get a
would
hold of the city,
be,
or-
sorry, through the chair, it would be me.
Okay.
There's always a lot of confusion about what the CAO evaluation is annually, and it's not something that the CAO doesn't want, it's something that the CAO does want. And that's why it's in my contract asking for the annual review. So you have a good understanding of what you need to work on in terms of leadership and maybe like what's going on, and that opportunity to at least check in once a year if you haven't been checking in with different individuals before them. So in other municipalities, it's the CAO who actually leads the process with council to get this done. But in this case, given the conversations that have happened over almost the past year here, it seemed better to have more of a neutral, at least until we have proper systems in place to be able to take it forward.
So, okay, just not knowing much about it, it just seems, Eleanor, like it's a bit of a conflict where the person that's being evaluated is involved in setting up the evaluation.
Right. So
Like usually,
I guess, and this is where I guess it's a different of philosophies that are coming together here. So it's a formative evaluation that's happening every year. So the process is, the purpose of the consultant is that they come up with the tools that we use every year. The CAO isn't there next to you as you're filling out those tools. The point is for the tool to be there so I can get the feedback, good, bad, ugly. So there's not really it's not me influencing the process in any sort of way.
oh, no, yeah.
But I have to be involved with the consultant who's putting this together, because I also need to make sure that the tools are set up in such a way that it doesn't put me in a position where it's combative with political
Right,
officials.
right.
And that I can actually get the constructive feedback that I need. So that's really the drive behind it. And the recommendation that I had made, I think it was around last June, was that there is benefit to bringing in a neutral person, at least for the first couple of years to see where we are. And we may continue that forever, who knows?
Yeah, just not understanding how it really works. Like in the past, I think the HR manager was responsible for getting documents or whatever. And I'm just wondering, the optics don't really look good as the CAO is looking after her own evaluation. And I'm wondering, and I know you're not really, twisting any arms around it, but I just wanted the optics probably,
Right.
it's like me doing my own evaluation for the government. I'm involved in setting it up, which I don't think they'd allow.
So in this case, what we're setting up for with the RFP is my role is like making sure the facilitator is here to
Yeah,
do their
yeah,
job.
yeah.
And then they're just going to take it from there and then work with the committee and do,
Exactly.
do what
No,
they
no.
need to do. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything funny going on. I'm just saying the optics, like that's probably something that she could look after as HR manager.
Yep, we
to make
might,
sure that that
we might
happens.
do
I
at
just
a
don't think
distance.
people are-
It's just
General public or anybody finds out that.
coordinating someone. Yeah.
Councillor Ramsey?
Yeah, so you explained it to Eleanor, and I think Terry did too, so we're still looking for an outside person or company to set it up. We're not going back to the old school, I just keep saying going back to the old school, where a lawyer or HR or someone would have questions for us, and we go there. So we're still gonna be paying out thousands of dollars to have someone set it up again every year. Is that what we're asking?
So you have someone who's going to set up the initial tools that we're going to use once a year. And then that person does come back once a year to facilitate the process between the committee and council. And me.
Okay. It's just like it's a third party again, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And like, if it works, it works. But, okay. I'm good with it anyway, but I'm just saying, like, once we started it this year, well, then we can almost use that as a template for other years. The questions or something along that line, but it makes no difference to me either way. Like, I can be on the phone with somebody or I can sit down with somebody and talk to them.
There's a process that we need to go through. So what was absent in the 6-month review is it was more of like, what do you think of Eleanor? Versus an actual performance evaluation. You have set up goals for the year and, objectives and actual measurables that I'm looking to achieve, and either I achieve them or not. So we didn't have that in that kind of, and that was never the purpose of that 6 month, because nobody can achieve, that many measurables in 6 months. So this is different. This is annual. This ties into what I would put forward as feedback of what I'm working on for professional development for that year. It captures all the goals. It gets feedback on that or anything else that needs to be addressed. So that's really the difference.
Thank you. I think it's important to note, I don't want to get any perception of conflict that you're involved in. I was very upfront in the discussions we had regarding your 6-month annual review, and I think it was noted that as a council, one, we didn't have the tools, or we didn't have the pathway to manage the performance of the CAO on an annual basis. So as a committee, we can do one of two things. We can do it ourselves as a committee and remove HR and the CAO as part of that. Or my recommendation at the time was that we bring in a third party that specializes in this type of work and can develop a framework and can help us manage. When I say us, that's either the committee or the council as a whole, to help us manage that process. I felt like that was overwhelmingly received by council during that time, hence why we're moving forward with this method. I think traditionally there's been a lot of confusion as to who manages that. In the past, whether it been the HR department or and even seeking legal advice on this, they strongly suggest we're doing exactly what we should be doing and keeping that separate. All documentation and stuff will be not housed with the city on this particular situation. It'll be contained, and we as a council or a committee here will probably have more insight to what is actually happening. Now, in my discussions with Eleanor and understanding it, we can't do this without her to some degree. She is the CAO and we're working with her and helping to do this. So I think us as a committee, it'll be important that we ensure that we keep those distances and boundaries so that we don't get that perceived perception that the CAO is driving her own boat here. That's not it's not what's intended. But we can't do it in isolation of her either. Hence putting this together. So once this comes together, we may do the evaluation. She won't be part of the evaluation, concept if that's what we so choose to do, because that might be perceived as she's helping pick the person, somebody who's doing that. So it's going to be some work on our part as a committee. We're going to have to schedule time to do that. I assume outside of chamber here, but certainly. In the absence of, we don't have anything at this point. So if we don't get something in place, what the long term looks like for that, we may be able to adopt that framework to a point where if we feel it can be managed within the HR. So in other words, if Emily and her team could manage that and stay impartial to what that situation is, then we could do that. Otherwise, we may have to do this a reoccurring thing yearly. So it's just cost of us managing, as everybody says, the only one person that we manage is the CAO. Well, this is the tools and the costs that it's going to associate it to that. So we have to, I think this is a really good step in the right direction. So we'll do our very best, Eleanor, to kind of keep you at bay when needed and bring you in when needed. I think that's fair. And the perceptions should be minimal based on our work in doing that. So I guess that's our commitment as a committee. And then bring in HR when needed. If it's applicable and it's not a conflict and it adds value, we'll bring in HR to help and assist. We're all on the same page? Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no, as long as we don't, it doesn't be seen as a conflict. That's all. HR always looked after before. So, and I'm not really clear on the process of how this gets set up.
But I see HR looking at it before as more of a conflict than us doing a third-party thing. Emily reports to the CAO, so I see that as being more of a conflict. This is impartial. This is what we talked about. This is what we.
But this is dealing with the consultant though, correct?
Dealing with the consultant.
If somebody has to deal with the consultant to set this all up.
Yep. So, no, well, right now, there's nobody doing anything other than we got an RFP here. When those results come in, when we have applicants who have submitted, that'll come to this committee, and this committee will be the selection committee made up of here who determines how we go through there. We may involve the CAO for her expertise and understanding of the process for doing an RFP inside the operations of government, but a lot of the review and evaluation criteria should be led by this committee in probably conjunction, I'll say, with Emily, just to help us move through the RFP process. How does that, she's just going through in the
Yeah.
template, not telling us if we pick, you say 8 and you say 9, I say 10 for the score. She doesn't come in and say, no, I don't think that's right. You should do 7, 6, 5. She's saying, okay, great, you had to score. That's what you did. So I think we'll move through that. So really, I think it's all going to come down to the committee on how we're going to get through this.
So Eleanor, you don't feel there's a conflict if you're involved at the start?
Nope. I wrote the RFP. The RFP comes to you. You're the one who decides whether that RFP hits the street or not. And then we collect what comes back from the RFP and it comes back to you. And
Yeah.
then you're going to evaluate it as a
Yeah.
committee. So we're
I'm
not.
talking about after, once that's fulfilled, the RFP is fulfilled and we get a consultant. That's where I'm talking about from.
Yeah,
that
so this
starting
is,
point.
I realize the conflict thing, but
Yeah.
I can't emphasize this enough. CAO evaluation once a year isn't about whether we should keep or fire the CAO. CAO evaluation once a year, for me, as a leader, is an important tool about how I decide where I need my professional development in the following year, different areas that I want to work on as a leader of this corporation. So for me, I have to be involved in this process, especially with the consultant we're hiring, to make sure that it's me, and this is under my contract that I asked for this, to make sure that I'm getting a tool that's going to help me receive the information that I need, but also a tool that helps council be able to provide their feedback in the most efficient and effective manner. So it's going to be a combination between the CAO and then this committee and ultimately council, who will approve and sign off on what these tools are and what that annual process will be.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, and when you go through this process annually, it's not where there could be a 360 interviews required. I wouldn't be conducting those interviews. It'd be the neutral person who's doing that. And then I have to be involved once a year because council just can't come up with a bunch of goals for me without actually discussing whether those are viable goals or possible. So it's a back and forth
So
conversation that has to
I
happen.
really truly believe that we will be led as a committee and as a council by the third party to put a framework in place that tells us how we interact with the CAO, what we need the CAO to do for us, which is establish your goals, establish your roadmap for the next 3 to 5 years, whatever it may be, and then we'll measure all of that as we go.
Yep.
We can't do that in
Okay.
isolation
Yep.
of you. We may set some goals for you as well.
Sure.
As a council, I think we've already done that, and you'll have your own goals. And then I think from a disciplinary perspective, that is something that is completely different. If you are, absent from work for a long period of time, we have no idea where you are, that's a whole different, we're going down a different path in that situation versus the evaluation
And you
of,
wouldn't wait
no,
for
no,
the
we wouldn't. We'd be
year-end
dealing with that on
evaluation to
a
deal with
regular
things like
basis.
that,
Okay.
right?
Okay, well, I think, so we need to move this forward, approval to move this to council, to
Chair?
get their approval. Yep.
Yep.
Mr. Ramsey?
Don't hurt your head.
And it hurts when I think, but, so when the RFP goes out, I'm just trying to get it straight in my head, that's all. And then who picks let's say 3 people apply, who has the final say? Council? Or this committee? Or
You as a committee are going to review them.
the 3?
Just like staff normally would,
Okay.
but you as a committee are going to review them. You're going to choose your top contender.
Okay,
And then you as a committee are going to make that recommendation to council.
the council.
That is the one you're going to work with.
Okay. I'm just trying to get that all straight in my head.
And we can help you with the process, but we're not intervening in
Oh,
terms
no,
of
no,
who you're
no.
selecting or anything else.
No, that's what
Making sure it gets here.
and that was the thing I was thinking about. Like, once their RFPs go out and we keep saying 3 come in, like, do they go to you first or anything like that? But they don't. They come to this council or this committee, and then we'll say, okay, we want A, B, or C to council.
Yeah.
Excellent. I just want to straight, that's all.
Key message, Councillor Ramsey, is that, and I'll look to Emily, but maybe it's not Emily. There's a process within the city to, when an RFP is submitted, received, and gone through the pipeline of what that looks like. We still will recommend and lean on them to follow that. That's just, I hate saying it, but it's just pushing paper to where it needs to go at the end of the day. And that's to us. And then we, as a committee, will have to come together and schedule times to meet and review, and we may do that, Saturday afternoon here in the room, we're doing whatever, and we're deciding how we're going, and then we will put forward the next steps, and then the next steps might be awarding to, council and then awarding, so none of us are awarding, we don't know how to do that here. Emily might work through then the contract process, and she'll say, here's what we need to do from a contract, and so on and so forth, or to who's ever working that, and pop out the other end, and then we'll start working with them. So I'm pretty confident we can do all of that, but we have to have the support and help from the HR department as well. Okay, so I didn't get someone to move that and second? Thank you very much. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much for the report. Just looking now back at our agenda, I believe we have no other reports. So Councillor Bernard, I think you wanted to introduce something to new business, so we'll open the floor up for your discussion.
Yeah, I just want to get clarification. I know Ellen and I talked in email a couple times. We never really got to talk one-on-one, and it's been frustrating for me, but maybe I get some clarity today. So back in June, in June's meeting, in the minutes, it's pretty clear, and I'll read some of the minutes. Mayor Philip Brown stated he was in favor of getting the roles filled that are necessary, but wanted to start with 2 director roles and see how things are from there. Kevin Ramsey agreed. He wanted to be proactive, follow the governance report. Myself, the minutes was that the last CAO didn't have any directors under him, and I know he was busy, so that's why we agreed to do 2 hires. So Eleanor stated she was flagging what she was looking for as Director of Community Services. So I guess from those conversations, what we basically said, well, not basically, it was pretty clear. We said 2 directors. And if you wanted a third, it was going to go through the budget process. Because for me, where all this stemmed from for me is I don't know where we are financially. There's been a lot of hiring. There's going to be a lot of hiring. We talk about the city growing, and the city is growing. And I guess I'm more concerned about police staffing, police infrastructure. I'm more concerned about fire staffing, more fire infrastructure as the city grows, and you get more buildings, you get more infrastructure to pay for, and then you have the same with public works. I understand now that even the last storm, we're down on staff. We've got staff that are poached. Our salaries aren't up to what they were years ago. It's comparable to other companies now. Other companies are paying a lot more, so it's hard to keep full-time staffs for snow clearing, whatever. So there's going to be a lot of costs. So after this happens, and then we find out later that, that third director that we said no to as a committee, we're going to put somebody in acting. We've never had a director. So I don't know how you put someone in acting to go into a director position when council's never given approval, and the other directors we had over a decade ago were canceled. So,
What's that?
So the only other thing, I know Eleanor in her defense, like Eleanor is saying that if from her perspective, she feels that 3 is what she feels that the organization needs. So the ask in June was for permanent funding for that director position. So now I'm kind of, once the committee had talked about it, we said no, go through the process. Then we find out later, an email comes out, oh, by the way, I'm going to hire somebody who's acting. So we're going to move a manager up to acting pay. We're going to put somebody else in the manager's role and pay him acting pay. Then we're going to put somebody else in that role, just domino effect. And I'm saying, why can't we wait till the budget process? Why can't we wait to see what financial position the city's in? So it's almost like, well, no, I want to put somebody in there, so then when I ask for it, I could say the salary's already there, I don't need any more money. Well, the money must be coming from somewhere. So, does it bother me? Yeah, it bothers me. It's the process that bothers me. You know what, and at the end of the day, if council feels they need a 3rd director, fill your votes. But right now, I don't know what the cost is, I don't know what salary, a comparison from 22 to 23, and now all the hiring that we're doing now is at the tail end of 23, so we're not going to know the full effect till 24. I'm not interested in raising taxes. I see some of the other communities are talking about, we haven't had a tax increase in the city for quite a few years. Well, we've had assessments go up. We've had new bills, and we've been able to keep on top of our budgets with that. So I don't have a comfort zone of saying we need 3 directors and start to pay for it, whenever I'm more concerned about the services that we need on the ground, that we're going to be looking for. And you know what, at the end of the day, if we don't have enough money, we don't have a whole lot of options, and raising taxes is not one that I want to look at.
So I'll try to make some comment, and then I'll hand it over to the CAO. So thank you, Councillor Bernard, for expressing your concerns regarding that. So my understanding is, clearly we've talked and budgeted for 2 directors, and in my understanding, with the increase in increase of the services and the operations of the city, and we have a CAO who was directly had a number of direct reports to her, I think anywhere from 15 to 17 direct reports at one point in time. We've had things that are changing. We have, the operations of the city are requiring a different structure of management. So, I think the CAO is recognizing that, although all of the things you indicated are very much important as well, but, it's structuring and organizing the organization to account for that is key as well. So my understanding about the management or the director, although it was discussed in here, I think it's always been clear that that 3rd director position would be sought from a permanent perspective through an initiative that might go to finance, pending budget approval and pending council approval. So, and if we get there, and as a council, I think it's our responsibility to listen to our CAO and understand and the work that is needed and the structure that is needed. That's not just waking up one day and deciding this is what I want. She's clearly been here now 8 or 9 months or more, and is recognizing that she needs supports in various areas. And the KPMG report also supports some of that. Again, that was a roadmap and helped at a point in time, and we're changing all the time. We're growing and changing, and I think that's important to recognize. I know that's not addressing your immediate question, but your immediate question is basically from this June meeting when we were talking about that position, and a decision has been made operationally, internally using, I have to assume, the 23-24 budget dollars within. So if the question is where is that coming from, we could get that answer here shortly, possibly. In determining that we will make an acting position until such a time when council has the ability to review the initiative for the permanent 3rd director, which I perceive that as a business case. So Eleanor will make a business case, and we approve or disapprove based on budget. It's not our role to determine whether or not we need 3 directors, 4 directors, or 5 directors. We're not running the operations of the city. We are making decisions based on recommendations that come forward. No different than 10 plow drivers, 10 police officers. We're looking at it from a budgetary perspective, and does this make fiscal sense, what is going to be at the detriment of that possibly, those types of arguments. I will never question whether or not we need 3 or 5 directors. I think at the end of the day, that's a decision that is made internally based on the operations of the city. And I think where Eleanor's at right now is realizing that during that gap between here and the budget, she needs to have the 3rd director, and sought an opportunity to use internal operational dollars that are already budgeted for, an opportunity to allow for the management team to act in a director position to gain skills and knowledge and understanding for potential growth within the organization. And that's what I believe the decision was around that. I don't think it was anything we said, don't do this, and I wasn't here to that meeting, I think I was absent. I don't think the message was, you can't do that, don't do that. I think you're within the confines of your responsibility as a CAO to make those decisions. And if I'm wrong, then correct me, Eleanor, but I think, that is where we're at. If you were making a decision to make a permanent position out of that without going through council, I think we'd be having a different conversation here.
Well, and if I can give some feedback on what you said. So I guess from where I sit, looking back, there has been no directors. There was a CAO. And he ran the city for a number of years without a director. So then we come down with a deputy CAO. So when we were moving to this process, we agreed, okay, no DCAO, we won't call it that. We'll hire a director and we'll use that salary. And then what's left over, and we'll beef up a second director. We'll pay for a second one. And that's what the governance review said. That's why we did a governance review. To say it's a spot in time here or there, we're still hiring today from the governance review. So this was not in it. This is what the conversation was that we had. And that's the problem that I'm having with, I'm not sure where authority came to just all of a sudden say I need 3rd, but I haven't been shown why the need is there. Eleanor may say she needs a 3rd. That's great. But the governance report didn't say that. So nobody's showing me, here's why I need a 3rd. So again, I'm back to not knowing what the total costs are, not knowing what our salaries are, not knowing what the needs are. I mean, we've been going through budgets. We've seen all the asks, and a lot of them I don't doubt. When the city is growing, and yes, there's more pressures put on it, to me, I find there's a lot of pressures on public works, a lot of pressures on police. And we heard now about the poaching of police, and now there's talk about bumping their levels up. So there's pressures on the ground. We don't know yet what's going to happen with the 3rd fire hall. We don't know what the decision's going to be on hiring for full-time firefighters. So to me, there's a lot of unknowns. And can that 3rd one wait? Definitely. We hired 2. We've got 100% more than what we had before. And then can it wait till after the budget? To me, there's no reason it can't. So why would you have to throw that in? I mean, I could say there's lots of positions we could put people in acting, that the role was there and it hasn't been filled. So,
Well, Councillor Bernard, I will have to respectfully disagree. I think you're making decisions as a councillor on what we need and don't need for the city.
I'm not making any decisions. I'm wondering how the decision was made.
And we can get that, but I think you just said 2 seconds ago that we don't need a 3rd director, we can wait, there was a lot of we don't needs.
That's my opinion.
Yeah, I respect that. I said, respect your opinion, but I think at the end of the day.
Until it's proven.
Okay, so if what we're missing here is the rationale or justification for the temporary director position for the 3-month period or 4-month period we're looking for here, then if that's what we're missing, we'll give the CAO an opportunity to discuss that. However, I think it's important to note that if we may not have, the CAO may not have been required to do that, and if that's the case, then that will be it. But also what might have been missing as a result of that is we should have gotten something if we didn't. And I know there's been some email exchanges, and I thought there was some good rationale and judgment in there as to what was happening. And then as we go forward, I think in all of the management plans that are being put forward, sorry, I call them management, the initiatives that are being put forward for resources are all going to be, highly scrutinized based on need, based on budget, and based on, urgency. This being one, we as a committee here, I think we had two in our report last time, two positions that may or may not get in the priority list. So I think it's important, and I respect that what you're saying in the middle here is there's a gap in information. So I'm going to give the CAO an opportunity here to address that. And if we can get some clarification on that, or if you need to go back, Eleanor, and kind of formalize something more for us, I'll give you the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, this decision is purely operational. I only have to come to council under our policy for permission for permanent roles. I don't come to council when someone's acting in a role in this municipality. I don't come to council when I'm replacing someone on maternity leave. This was an extension of duties for current positions. We're calling it something as an acting role, so these staff members have the ability to claim it on their resumes when they apply for a new position. Hopefully that comes in the future. But there are a couple of things that I want to talk about and clear up here. So that meeting that we had last June, what was the ask was for consideration in the 24-2025 budget. It wasn't for funding on the spot for that position. So it was
Well,
flagging.
I think that's what I read out, Ellen.
Yeah, so it's flagging that I was coming with this ask in the
Yep.
future. So on and off, the KPMG report gets brought up in this room quite often. KPMG report, again, is an operational document. It's not something you would normally bring through a council. It was brought through this committee here, which is not normally something you put in front of politicians. The reason why is because there's a lot of positions in there that might not even make it to the budgetary process. And when you go through your budget process once a year as an administration, you have to make an evaluation on all the different positions in the municipality. And we know there's needs on the ground for boots on the ground. But what is not spoken about often politically is the desperate need for stronger systems in place for risk management within this municipality that are totally lacking. And we saw that with the the BDO report, with the forensic audit. And quite frankly, there's years of catch-up that this municipality must do. It opens us to risk, and reputationally as a CAO, it opens me up to tremendous risk. So as part of this budget process this year, I think if you happen to be watching the meeting yesterday, they were joking about Eleanor and my matrices. And I have a 20-page one that is coming as part of the budget
Joking about what?
process. A matrix, a table,
Oh,
a
okay.
20-page table that lays down the different functions in this municipality, what's going on with the different departments right now, and the extent of work that we need to complete to get us up to par with standard municipalities. And it's a lot. And it's not something that I can do alone. It's not something I could do with two directors. The third director will have a massive role in this. But that pitch will all be part of budget for you. I'm not here today to pitch that. Wasn't prepared today to pitch that. I do want to touch on the KPMG report, though, in a little bit more detail.
But just before you go on to the KPMG report,
Yep.
can you tell me why? Because I know you pitched it, and I know you pitched it for the 24-25 budget. And that's when we said, okay, that's fine. Apply through like every other job.
Yep.
But then turn around and put someone in an acting position
Sure.
in that role.
Yeah, so
That's why have the
I
beef,
can
and
definitely
I'm still
speak
not
to
sure
that.
where the authority comes for that, because it's not.
So I
it's
can
not a
do that. It's
position.
not a permanent position. I
Where-
don't need authority.
So where does it say that?
That I can do that?
Yeah.
It says in the MGA that I'm responsible for hiring and contracting. That's my role. And your hiring policy
Yep.
says that I only come to council to fill and budget for permanent positions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
So this is not a permanent position.
no, it's not until it's approved by council.
Right. So the staffing bylaw does read that it has to come to council for an approval.
For a permanent
permanent
position.
position, yeah.
Yep, and it's acting right now, it's not permanent. The staff who are doing the extra work, no, it's not permanent at this point. We'd have to, from the budget line, it's coming from salary budget line, positions that aren't filled yet,
So that was my other question. Where's the money coming from for that position?
from the salaries. Just like when there's acting, when we have acting acting roles or maternity. And when someone goes on maternity leave, we have to pay maternity benefits, and then
No, I
we also
realize
bring
that.
in someone
That-
and we pay extra there.
That makes
So it all-
sense to me though, Eleanor.
It all comes out of the salary line in what we have the ability, that money, to be able to maneuver in terms of things that we need throughout the year. So that's the budget line that it came from. So that's it. That's just plain and simple what it is and why. Why did it have to happen now?
Yeah.
I don't know how to put this other than bluntly, for my own sanity, to be able to do my job properly.
But
So-
we have Dan just started.
Yeah, Dan
We have
has
another- We
started.
have another one hired, I think he starts on the 15th, maybe?
Yep.
So I
So
just
Dan
wonder-
has started, and again, I will show you the justification for the third director when it comes. But I can tell you right now that I am unable to fulfill all my duties and obligations with the senior team that I have in place and have just starting. And the huge amount of work that Dan has in front of him from a governance and financial point of view, his plate is full. The director that's coming on for integrated growth, the Housing Accelerator Fund, new official plan, new zoning bylaw, that corporate real estate, which we had come to council the other day, which was not an ideal scenario for anyone, their plate is going to be full in terms of getting into the details of that. So I needed the help, and it just comes down to that. So I needed the help. I also have feedback and have had feedback from staff that they want more leadership opportunities and the opportunity for to build out our succession planning here. One of the obstacles for staff in applying for the director positions is there is a real challenge in knowing how to pitch yourself, because there's been no directors here in the past to model themselves after or understand the level of leadership they need to aim for. So by having this acting position, we have a number of staff members who are going to rotate through it, and they're going to learn in that process how to operate at that strategic level that a director needs to, and what some of their duties and responsibilities are. And it's very different from a manager. So that's really what's going on here.
So,
Alan,
so the
let me-
salaries that you say, the salaries to pay the acting is already in the budget, so I assume that's from Sue's contract?
So the director positions started later. We have another position to take from, which wasn't filled, which is the auditor position. We haven't filled that one yet.
The what?
The auditor position. Yeah. So we have positions that have been approved that are funded that we just haven't filled yet, and we will. Only a matter of time. So that's where it's coming from. It's coming from the salary line.
So,
So, just a sec. And I guess, it's great to hear some explanation for it. I still would have liked to know before it happened that this was being planned, that you're going to do an acting, because I find, yes, as CAO, you are responsible for hiring, and yes, you are if somebody goes up maternity leave, or if somebody needs acting. I just found out that there was no director position approved, there was no full-time one, so there was no need to throw someone in it, and it just seems to be at budget time that threw somebody into it that doesn't have a whole lot of experience at it, but anyway. And it's the salary dollars at the end of the day, because whatever you're using now, if that goes to be permanent, then there's going to be the benefits and everything, so you're still going to have to, we're going to have to backfill that salary budget with more money.
Oh, yeah, we
So
would
what-
need funding. We're still doing the math and figuring out how much funding we would need to fill it based on other activities that have been going on in salary. But yeah, the ask at budget time is for a full salary for a director position. That's what the
Yes.
ask is.
So I guess for me, when I know that we have to pay back to provincial government $1.5 million the next 2 years, we've already approved $1 million for policing, which, as you know, my stand on that doing it so early, but anyway, it's done. So that's $2.5 million we have to find right off the bat. And then, so all the hiring that we're doing, I'm not sure how much of the hiring that we need new salary dollars for, and the salary dollars are already there. So I have no idea how we are doing financially. I know the last number of years we had surpluses, and that was great. But, you hire 10 people, if it's new dollars, with benefits, you're pretty well looking at $1 million right there. So I have no idea where we are today. I don't know what the comparison is from our salaries from 2022 to what they're going to be in 2023 and 2024. So every time a job comes up, I want to fill it, I know myself, I don't know where we are financially. I don't know if we can afford it or not, but we're asked to say yes or no. Well, I need it. No, I need it to function. And we're going to get a lot of that. And as we're seeing, I mean, like just the other night with policing, what are we going to do? If we want to keep them, do we bump that salary so that it bumps up to the next level? So it's a $30,000 bump for each of those officers. And again, the fire thing, I mean, where are we going to, what's going to be the decision on that fire? So we're going to have to hire 20 new full-time firefighters? You're talking $2 million. So I just find, for me, it's going a little too fast. And that's why when that came out, and I've been so much against it, because I mean, our conversation was, we'll go with 2 for now and see. So that's why I've been against it.
Thank you,
Anyway.
Councillor Bernard. Eleanor, is there any other positions that are being filled temporary right now that have gone through this similar process in the last 6 months? And
No, this is an exception. If there was a member on the staff team who wanted or needed something like this done, because they were in a situation that they felt they needed to, then we would discuss it and make a decision accordingly, take a look in their budget in terms of salary, and go from there.
Sure. So I think there's a lot of great points here today, a lot of great explanation, good concerns, and I think as a council and as a committee, we certainly need to understand. So maybe, I think, and what I'm hearing here a bit is, you're within your right to do what you need to do operationally. I think, as a council, we'll get the opportunity to review and debate all of these positions, whether it's a director position or a PW staff person and everything in between, and where that impact comes from a funding perspective. I don't know if this is garnering a little more attention because it's a director position to Councillor Bernard. I don't know. That's why I asked if you did this in a sense of a lower level position, would we be having this discussion? I feel like I don't know if this is just director related or.
I think the answer to that, it's more that there was not a position permanent, and we made some staff, we put it into a
get it,
position
yeah.
that wasn't, like if Dan come up with stuff and they had to go for a month, then I could see somebody who goes in Dan's as acting, because the position's there. It's been
I get
approved.
I get what you're saying. I think that, we don't officially have this position in place and we're temporary. We're aiming to, you're going to build a business case to try to present that to council. Whether you're successful or not, time will tell.
But I think what it does, it says, well, we have one now, we can't do without them.
No,
As opposed
I-
to some of the other positions where they're trying to fill.
Yeah, I mean, I see that optics of that. I don't think that's the case, but I think, like any of the positions that we're going to be looking to approve as a council, it'll have to have a solid business case behind it, and the budget will have to be determined, and it'll come out what it comes out at the end of the day. If, having a third director position is needed to successfully operate, as you indicated, the operations of this city to be more effective and be more in par with other jurisdictions. Who are we to say that that's not the case other than a budgetary perspective? Like, I'm not going to debate whether you need a position or not. I'm going to trust that you're putting together a solid business case, and that if it doesn't make sense financially for the corporation based on the detriment of other positions that are more highly needed, that's where the debate for me will come in. So you can tell me you need 10 directors. I'm going to take your advice on that, but will it get approved? I have more information needs to be weighed against at that point in time, but it certainly won't be me telling you what you need and don't need in the corporation to run this day-to-day operation. So I just want to give Councillor Ramsey an opportunity to have a speak here. We're getting onto time here, and I appreciate all the comments.
No, I just have a short comment anyway, and like, we looked at all the budgets from every department, and everybody's asking for staff, and it's anywhere from $60,000 to $100,000 a year, and then your benefits are in there. And I just, there's gonna be an awful lot of disappointed managers, because we just can't hire everybody, unfortunately, because we just don't have the money. If we get a windfall of $5 million, I'd say, yeah, fill your boots. But, I mean, budget's gonna be, this is, I've been here for 10 years, and this is probably gonna be our toughest budget because of staff hiring, and every department wants more and more people. And they all need it. And we heard for the last 4 years, we need more police officers on the ground. And as Terry said too, like the union's still not finalized over at the fire station and things along that line. And like, there's gonna be a lot of back and forth going on, and like, somebody's gonna miss out in this thing. I'm not saying he is the third director or anything on there, but, Parks and Recreation or Public Works or Police, or somebody's gonna have to say, I'm sorry, we can't do this. Because we cannot run a deficit, correct? Like, those are only my comments, that it's gonna be a fun 2 or 3 days, and we're going at it. I mean, somebody's gonna go home mad.
But
That's what we'll do. So-
don't get me wrong. I mean, you know what? If the budget does prove that we can afford it, then it's just a matter of picking the positions that we can afford. I'm not against it. If a business case comes back and says that this is why we need it, and it makes sense, fine. I haven't seen any of that.
And recognizing that's a fair recognition of, we're yet to see that for the 24-25. I think the thing is in the middle here, as you indicated, we talked about it here, next you know, we have it and we're doing it. I get it. So, Eleanor, I appreciate today your rationale and explanation. I don't think it was, certainly it was an operational decision. It was one based on need and necessity. Could have been more transparent. Yes, I guess we could chalk that up and, saying we could have been in whatever that, but still at the end of the day, it was your decision to make regardless of that. That's where I would kind of leave it at. I think we need to move forward, let it go through its due process, and we'll see where it comes out the other end at this point in time for that position. And all others.
If I could
Kevin, yeah.
clarify, Mr. Chair. So the budget process this year, what's being brought to council is a package of the prioritized positions. So it's not managers pinned against managers. It's one package from administration to council. There's 36 positions out there. It's not going to be 36 positions presented to council.
Presented, no. We'll
It'll
come with
be
the
the ones
prioritized list,
prioritized
yeah.
based on business case of what you're talking about and what the needs of the municipality are, and that we balance that out as an administration before it comes to council. Because it cannot be different departments who are loud enough in front of council who get the most positions. It has to be what we need organization-wide, based on operations and balanced out amongst operations. It can't be about which departments are the loudest in terms of needs, because the need is across the organization. Every department has needs that need to be, some are high profile, some are not, some are hidden behind the scenes, and we need it all to function properly as a city.
Right.
I do, before we leave, I just want to clear this up because I wish the mayor was here too, because it often gets brought up. I do want to bring back, and I know Councillor Bernard gets annoyed when we say the KPMG report is a snapshot in time. So I want to clear it up because for me, there is value in this KPMG report, and the recommendations from there will come forward as part of the budget process. But I also need some understanding of what that KPMG report was. So it was asked to come up with an idea of what the structure of the municipality should look like. And in that work, there was a core project team and work done with the managers, a couple of questions after the mayor, asked of the mayor, deputy mayor. Of the core project team that was asked about the report, gave the most influence into the report, it was the interim CAO, interim director, a strategic officers initiatives officer who was on contract, and an acting manager of human resources. Everybody involved in that was a group of people in transition. So it's hard to understand the needs of the organization when everybody is in transition. So since that time, we've managed to fill some roles, get people into permanent positions. There's different insight now of what's gone on with this organization since then. And the other piece that I want to say is if you go into that report, it talks about a straw model. And it was meant to be a draft that was supposed to be shared with the incoming CAO to provide background for how I would see I need to function,
What
right?
was, Eleanor?
What's that?
What was Supposed to be a background?
It was supposed to be a draft, and it's written right in there in the report. The whole thing is supposed to be a draft to be given to the incoming CAO for consideration. That's verbatim out
That's
of
the
that
governance
report.
review you're talking about.
Yep. And then it was also noted in the actual diagram that talks about 2 divisions under the CAO. There's a little star in the corner of it that says there is flexibility to have 2 to 4 divisions under the CAO depending on preference. The other issue that I take with this report, and I'm actually going to be reaching out to KPMG about this because I don't understand it. In that report, they had 4 comparable municipalities. Not one of them has less than 4 directors. So why would you look at all the comparables that we're supposed to be comparable to and then recommend to us that 2 is good enough? So something went on in that report. I don't know if it's the team that was in transition, and one of them is here, that at the time they felt, well, 2 is good enough to help us get by, right? So that's why I strongly feel it's a snapshot in time. Since being here, we've done a little digging, kind of looked under the hood of the car, and there are big things that we need to address. So that's why, and this is the kind of, and that's why for budget, it'll be a comprehensive kind of, here's where we're at, not just for the director position. Here's what we're facing across this organization. So maybe like we need someone stronger in IT, and here's why. We know the obvious about fire and police, but there's a whole bunch of other folks in there. And it's exactly what you're saying. We have to balance it out based on how much money we have coming in and how much money we have going out. And the plan is that positions that don't make it this year because of our confined financial picture, we plan for those in the following years, and we look at what that looks like. So it's a much more kind of strategic approach to all of this.
Thank you, Eleanor, for that. And just to add to that, and it's always been my understanding of the document as being like a straw model, allow as a guide. It was, I think we're hanging our hat too much on some of the positions there. Some of them are bang on of what the corporation was at that point in time, and it probably still exists today. But you now have been here for several months living the day-to-day operations and management of the city. And I don't think we can overlook the fact that some of those things are not being reflected in there in the reality of what is truly happening here at the city. And you should have that discretion to use that as a guide, but also to use what you're actually living and seeing here every day and how daunting of a task it is to run this corporation, one by yourself. You were doing it by yourself with the help of your managers and director, Sue, at the time. Which has now since, changed a little bit. So I think that's important too. I think we keep talking about that KPMG report as being, that's what it said in there, therefore that's what shall happen. Anyhow, I'm going to give Councillor Bernard, you have a quick question and we'll wrap up, or you're all good?
Not really. The only other thing, I know she mentioned about, all the jobs getting fair, and I agree with her. That's why I brought up about the fire last night where they went right to finance, which should have come through protective services. But anyway, that's been addressed. The only other thing I noticed is when Elle and I were talking about this, it was if it didn't get approved in this 24-25 budget, that it would be acting for another year until next year. Which I kind of thought, well, if council decides that it's not going to happen this year, we're still going to pay for one for another year. Like that's.
Thank you through the chair. Yes, possibly. It's no different than I think about the manager now of economic growth and attraction. That was an acting role. It's often you'll see municipalities have acting roles until that permanent position. And sometimes what we do is we sacrifice other positions in the meantime if that position is needed enough to be able to do it. It's not ideal, but this director position is a priority, and we'll also have other prioritized positions in the budget as well. And the plan with budget is to come together with a package that council gets a 0% increase in taxes, and perhaps a budget that looks at a 1% increase in taxes too. But in those will be what we're recommending be prioritized in order for our operations to keep running smoothly.
what did you say, about 1% tax increase?
Yeah. So, yeah, you'll see often administrations, you sometimes see the headliners. I think the most recent one was the City of Toronto with a 10% tax increase. So what happens is administrations will come forward and say, here's what a budget of a 0% increase looks like. This is what we're recommended you're going to get in this package. Here's what a 1% increase would look like. And here's what it means to the property owners, what a 1% increase means to them. And that's what would be
Yeah,
put forward.
and that's why, for me, Eleanor, and I'm looking at the assessments that go up all the time. And I mean, all the billing that we're doing, there's lots of revenue coming to the city. And I'm just, to me, I would like to live within my means of that, because we're getting tax revenue, we're getting tax increases. So then to go and throw a tax increase on top of assessments, I'm not interested. So that's why when this stuff all gets going and we start hiring people that I don't know about, and it looks like we're making a full-time position whether you like it or not, and I don't know the finances, that, yeah, I'm not agreeable to it. So, but anyway,
Okay.
there may be a case, and if we're flush with dollars, this may not be,
Okay, could be,
That's a tough
so
decision,
let's let that go through the process. Again, I'll wrap up by saying thank you, Councillor Bernard, Councillor Ramsey, for all the great comments and questions regarding this particular initiative. Thank you for the support of the the RFP to be put out for our evaluation, and thank you to Emily and Eleanor for your contributions today. So do we have a motion to, oh, Dan, I didn't, sorry. Dan's over in the corner there, how you doing? The motion to adjourn.
yep.
All right, thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Oh, man.